Hi, everybody. Happy Thursday. I hope you are enjoying this actual, wonderful spring weather it seems like we're having. Um, it's wild. There is no snow, at least where we are in the valley, and the sun is out. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. And I want to introduce, my wonderful co host, Megan. How are you doing today, Megan?
I'm doing great. And yeah, I was just looking at my plants outside and I'm like, I think they think it's spring because it looks like they're starting to grow and there's grass. It's very weird. Not what I would expect.
Exactly.
Wow.
They're thriving. My husband mentioned the other day he might need to mow the lawn again. I mean, who knows? But
Oh
we
my
are
God.
excited to be here. We have a wonderful guest with us today. We have Lacey Ernandes. She is brand expert, brand guru. She's going to be talking all about branding to advance your business. So we will dive right in. Thank you for joining us, Lacey. And are you able to share a little bit about your background and what inspired you to specialize in branding strategies?
Oh, thanks, Sammy Jo. Appreciate you. Happy to be here. Um, yeah, yeah. Where did I get this idea? I guess growing up, I was really into I was creative, I guess, and I was into fashion and design and really just little human inventions. I'm into that. And I kind of my mom suffered from mental health issues. So I was kind of really into psychology and behavior and why humans do what they do. And, then I just really got into brands, right? I call myself a brand hoe. I like the way that, certain brands make you feel like Nike or Christian Louboutin, those red bottom shoes. I think anybody has an image in their mind of some powerful woman in those shoes. Uh, but then I joined the Army and I was an air traffic controller for a little bit. And so I didn't do anything really creative. And when I got out, I was like, oh, I want to do something different. And I kind of leached on to Megan and what she was doing with elevated oats. And, it all kind of just came together, like my hobby, I guess you could say.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. And I love that it sounded like you were already passionate about it from the beginning and the way they made you feel. And then you kind of went a different avenue and then going to the Army and exploring that opportunity and then just kind of circling back around to it. Full
Yeah.
circle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say too, me and Lacey met in Iraq. So we have a very interesting history and background. And how many years have we known each other now? Because we added it up and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is wild.
It's
What'd you say? 18?
18 years. Yeah.
18 years. 18 years. So now we're at this point where I think we're at this point where we've known each other half of my life. And so we go way back. So to see the progress, and I'm going to say air traffic control is a little creative. You got to be a little creative with it. But now it's like the visuals, the psychology behind it, what Lacey did for Elevated Oats and how she grew our brand is why people still today, after a year of shutting it down, are like, oh yeah, Elevated Oats. Oh yeah, are you the Elevated Oats person? It's like that was because of the brand and the image that she built.
Oh, thank you.
I love that. Long time, beautiful friendship. So we're lucky to have you. And now Lacey has just been wonderful helping us with our branding and just giving us little tips and tricks to help grow the MEP. So it's just been phenomenal being able to work with you and for a little consulting session as well.
Me too.
So diving right into kind of what led you. So we got into the background, but in your experience, can you talk a little bit about what the most common branding challenges that you've seen out there that manufacturing businesses or small businesses, entrepreneurs might face and how they might overcome those?
Yeah. I guess I think the most common thing that I see is people are really trying to struggling to define who they are and as a brand or as a product. Or I think a lot of people are, the business community is really helpful. And so there's a lot of information coming at you left and right. And so it's really hard to stay focused, I think, if you don't know the target audience. So that's one of the first questions I ask people I'm dealing with, like, who's your target audience? A lot of people are like, oh, well, everyone. And actually, whenever we did Elevated Oats, I got to do an e-commerce class with Kurt and Wesleyan. I think it was like stop being the
Best kept secret.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, thank you. Um, and something that they said, Wesleyan like really preached, is like, if you try to be everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to no one. And like what that really means is like you just spread yourself too thin and you're not talking to anyone, but to everyone. So all your resources and all your ideas and everything, they're all in a million places. So yeah, because of that, I think a lot of people are inconsistent across platforms. So it's like if you're going, just not just even social media, right? Like LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, they're all kind of different, but even just packaging, for Elevated Oats, that's a way for us to be able to speak to the customer. I always tell Megan that it's like the very last chance, you have to sell the product. So if it's not consistent from your website, to your social media, to your package, people are going to be like, what are you selling? I'm not sure. Is this for me?
No, absolutely. And I throwing a little bit off on a curveball, but like thinking of that and you working with, growing that brand you did with Megan for Elevated Oats. So if that's like a big, I totally believe that. I love Kurt and Wesley and work with them. And I love that they've said like that's something that's resonated with me too. If you try to be everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to no one. So taking that for manufacturers or small businesses that are in that realm, what are some good tips or tricks to kind of like niche down their audience, would you say? Like making sure that we want to be everything to everyone. Well, that's not a good target. How do they really focus in, like laser in on who they're really trying to speak to?
Great question. I think that a lot of people say in the business community that depends, but it does. It depends on, your product and what you're trying to sell, your sales channels, A lot of people will try to be, for instance, like on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and whatever else there is out now, YouTube, and your customer might not even be there. So it's, sometimes you just need to rein back and do one thing really well and then build. I think I'm answering your question. Okay. And then build on from there.
Right.
And that's that niche, right? Like
right.
Going back, like focusing in on something, becoming really good at it.
Yeah.
Experimenting too, right? So, I mean, like that gives you that way to test it out without being all over the place and then seeing all these different results.
Yeah. Whenever I like talk to Megan, I'm like, well, who's your guys' target audience? And then I'll ask questions like, what stage are they in? You can service everyone, but that's not who you're talking to. So it's like, what stage are they in? How much, money are they, like bringing in, or, how many units are they moving? So those are all like things that you guys might want to consider when you're like niching down your target audience even.
Right. Absolutely. So it really sounds like they really need to kind of step back and look at that, like, picture overall, like, okay, who are we? Like, ask yourself those hard questions. And then from there, it's kind of like, okay, now where are they located? Like you said, you don't want to, like, I feel like you guys know more than anyone, and manufacturers and entrepreneurs, like you guys are wearing so many hats. So if you're on 6 different platforms, you're not going to be doing it all well. But it's really like, okay, well, we're figuring out that our audience is mainly on Instagram. So then maybe that's their big target, and that's something they want to, work on doing really, really well before they kind of add on the others. Am I getting that correctly?
100. You get.
So then going back to manufacturers with tight budgets, wearing all the hats, trying to do everything at once. So manufacturers with the limited marketing budgets, what do you see as some cost-effective branding strategies that you think can yield some good results?
Great question. I'm going to start with target audience again. I think if you're going to spend any money at all, like figuring out your target audience and your ideal customer is probably the most important before you start building your brand fully. Because you want to know your unique sales positions. You want to know who your competition is, and you want to know your mission and your values. So those all kind of together, right? You can focus on your unique story. So for Elevated Oats, for example, we were really heavy into, actually, we kind of struggled with our story for a little bit on our package. We were kind of like, are we leaning into women veterans? Are we leaning into the adventure? And it was unclear a little bit for a while. I think our last iteration that nobody got to see on the package, I think we narrowed it down finally.
But it takes that experimenting, right? Like
Right.
at the beginning, man, what we knew, I just had this idea. I'm like, yeah, we want it to be snack. So put it in a 6-ounce bag, having not done market research to see like what's actually on the shelf. What do people normally buy granola in? Like all of that is part of this like overarching scheme of that brand and then all of the tactics that go with it. So we learned a lot along the way. And I think now it's like, now you can really see like, okay, yeah, this is very valuable. This makes sense. And like going back to the foundations. Lacey's talking about when we talk about these things, we're talking about them at like 6:30 in the morning. I'll color up when I wake up and we'll just start talking about branding because it's so interesting, like the psychology aspect too, you know. These brands have figured it out, and there's a lot of brands that have those multiple iterations happening to dial in that who they're talking to. So starting off from the foundations is super important. I think that's a great tip.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're talking about like starting with the target audience, and you know, it took you guys a few iterations and testing. What were some for someone that's like, wow, we're right in the beginning, we want to be everything to everyone, and then they're figuring out that, okay, they can't do that. What are some tips or tricks or resources did you guys kind of utilize when you guys were really trying to niche it down and figuring out like, and you know, I'm curious now, you said you guys got, and probably was the last package, who was your audience? Was it more adventure? Was it women's veteran? Like what did you guys end up figuring out?
Well, we ended up leaning heavier into the veteran thing,
Okay.
because it was more niched.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I think you asked me a lot of questions there.
Sorry, no, yeah, you're okay. Like what strategies, I guess, did you play on to get to the point where it was like, all right, women's veterans, this is what we're focused on?
Great question. So we worked with G Beta. We worked with so many people. Megan, you might have to help me remember. The SBDC, you guys, the Alaska MEP. We went to the NPEW. I'm just saying a bunch of acronyms now. The National Products Expo West. Sorry.
No,
we also did another side project, Retail Ready, that prepares you for getting your product on the shelf at grocery stores.
Okay.
So we were very into the things you could try.
Ecosystem.
Leaned into the resources.
We dove into the resources. Partnerships were huge, and that's very cost-effective strategy that you could use for branding in the beginning. I think partnerships was one of our biggest successes. Of course, you're going to want word of mouth, you know, like reviews and referrals and whatnot. But I think that comes with time, and you know, as you're building, the brand is a long-term thing, you know. But I was just talking about a brand house today with Megan, and it's like it helps you view your brand as a whole picture. So it's like the foundation, and like it has like certain questions with that, and then like, you know, the first story or whatever. I think if people could spend a little time understanding how they all fit together, that's where we struggled. I believe we struggled. How does this all work together? And we kind of had to learn it as we went.
No, absolutely. And doing that testing really too to try to figure out. So it sounds like, if I'm understanding correctly, it's really leaning into the resources, figuring out, I mean, there's SBDC, we're around to help at the Alaska MEP, G Beta. I mean, you learn so many different things to kind of niche it down. Kurt Anderson, Wesleyan help really figuring out your audience, but target audience is really like the first thing you want to kind of focus on when going into branding. Does that sound right?
Certainly. Yes,
I would say too, with that, all of these resources are awesome, and they help you out, but it can be sometimes confusing because you do have so many different opinions on how things should be or what to focus on. So like just getting with Lacey and going over like this foundation brand house and seeing those pieces. I think if an entrepreneur can understand the system, because a lot of entrepreneurs are very system based. So I think if they understand the system, it could make it way easier going into all of those resources and being like, this is my target audience. I already know who I want to go for and what I'm trying to do. So I think focusing on just like get your brand figured out, figure out your brand so that you know when you go to those resources, what you also need from them.
Yeah, I definitely, because when to say what you're saying, like we leaned heavy on those resources, but and we built our brand over time, you know, but every time we had to fill out this packet, and I love the packet, but I don't love the packet because I don't have time to do the packet. So we're talking about, but those are questions that you need to answer, you know, for G Beta, like to be able to pitch, you know, for investors and whatnot. But those are the same questions you need to answer to make your business successful. So I believe, you know, like come hire me, guys, because I'm going to give you the workbook to end all workbooks. When people want you to do a workbook, you're just going to hand them mine. That's what's going to happen.
And that's something that you are focusing on and specializing in is you're helping the small businesses through that phase and handling that workbook for them.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So it almost sounds like, okay, so it's like you got to focus on your target audience to figure out, you know, where to take your brand, but also you need to figure out your brand when you're pitching your target audience. It's almost kind of like chicken or the egg thing. Where do you really like start? Almost.
For sure. I mean, I guess some people start with the product. I think that's where we started, right? And
Right.
it kind of like a lot of people that I know for certain, they use themselves as like a model because they already like what they're selling, hopefully. Yeah. So if you know that you would buy it, like it's easy to think about what your pain points are and, you know, like why you want that product.
Absolutely. I think majority of manufacturers, it seems like we work with, they got started because they noticed a problem like within that they were struggling with, and they were like, oh, I can solve it. I have this idea. And that's kind of what garnered it. I feel like most manufacturers we meet, especially in Alaska and all over, like these are passionate. They're passionate about their products. So it's really trying to like dive in on that and why they got started and what problem they're solving.
Going into that why, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Tristan actually added on here as a fish in a sea of whales, standing out and so important. And this is so true with our branding. Do you want to speak on that a little bit, Lacey?
Oh, yes. I think, okay, growing up, okay, so I'm going to add on to like why I got into branding too, a little here, thanks, you've inspired me. I was kind of like the weird girl, like I dressed weird, like I had the Kiss Army boots and like wore black and I like to, and I'm tall. I'm like an Amazon. That's what I tell people. And I actually feel like even though I stood out, like that was like my protection. And when you do niche down that far, right, where you're putting on this persona, you really do attract a certain type of people, and you don't. You'll actually repel other types of people, and that's okay, because you don't want to be selling to everyone.
Don't want to be everything to everyone.
Yep.
Thanks for the comment, Tristan. Tristan actually has Hive Mind Meadery. So he has this mead company. And Lacey, you would love this. Very innovative on the packaging. He puts it in these like stand-up pouches. And so talking about the shipping on having this like alcoholic beverage, not in a can, being able to ship all that packaging flat and then ship it to in your distribution channels flat. So interesting.
That's really cool. You can save a lot of space. Wow. I'd love to see that.
Oh, adult Capri Sun is what adult Capri Sun. Yeah.
I speak in my language.
Branding.
Thank you for being here, Tristan. I love that. All right. So talking about how you can differentiate yourself, you know, the big fish in this like sea, how can our small manufacturers differentiate themselves like in a crowded market through branding when competing against the larger, more established companies as startups? Like what are some tips and tricks in that area?
Okay, well, first I'm going to say invest in branding, obviously.
Yeah.
Niche it down, and leverage your local identity, especially in Alaska. I think that's the most feedback I could, like the most important feedback I could give you guys, because you have a strong community and people in the lower 48, they really love Alaska, everything. And if you can leverage your local identity and that story, then chef kiss.
Yeah, we were actually just talking about yesterday, Sammy, in our group meeting, how Alaska that's its brand. Alaska is a brand itself. Yeah,
It sure is. You got like a whole mental image in there. Other ways, I think a lot of people, they are always like, yeah, educate your audience. Blogs, shelf talkers in our situation. If you're in consumer packaged good food, there we go, I'm saying the CPG. Once you get it on the shelf, then what? Like you need to get it off the shelf, and you're not there to like physically sell it. So you have that added challenge. Then we had also brochures and videos. And I think all of those are important because people interact with your brand in different ways.
yes.
Absolutely. We have Tristan saying, capitalize that you are a small business, take the risk on branding that bigger businesses won't. Absolutely.
Right. For sure.
Yeah, and something I want to add to that too, like we really thought outside of the box for Elevated Oats in doing those hikes. So we started doing hikes monthly to bring people outside, which really aligned with our values. And a lot of other businesses could use that just for like networking things, right? Like networking can be so important, whether you're building a community for your people that are using your product or like your target audience, or even just that business to business side networking too, and how that can really expand your business growth.
Love that.
Yeah, and going into networking as well, I just feel like, as we kind of talked in the beginning, utilizing resources. Sometimes I feel like we hear from manufacturers, they feel so overwhelmed and alone. And so if you really lean into those resources and you go to networking, you might figure out things and might make connections with people you wouldn't have known would be a great connection, and kind of learn from them. And so you're not alone. There is this wonderful community that wants to support you. And I think Alaska does it really, really well.
Alaska does do it really well. Go ahead. Yes,
ma'am. Can I plug the Manu Mixer tonight?
You can.
4 to 7 p.m. at Alaska Food Co. in Wasilla. We are going to be seeing their product and then also hearing from other manufacturers, but trying to create that manufacturing community here in Alaska so that we can really think outside the box, work with each other, collaborate, figure out what works. Yeah.
Absolutely. And check Megan's sweater. You're going to do a little sweater check. She's got her holiday ugly sweater on. She is ready for the mixer. I don't have mine on, but I will have one on. So if you are able to come out for the mixer tonight, make sure to be festive and throw on your ugly sweater for a competition we have going on as well. And then it sounds like Tristan, you made another comment. So you are your brand ambassador. Wear your logo every day. It doesn't take much to get your jacket embroidered, and it's a tax write-off. I love that.
True that.
Great point.
True that. Yep.
So I want to wrap this up with one of my favorite questions I like to ask our guests. If you can have one piece of advice for someone that is just getting started in the manufacturing space, where should they focus their efforts first?
I'm going to say target audience.
Ding, ding, ding.
All about target audience. Love it.
And this is how you do branding. You just say the same thing over and over again.
Honestly. Consistent.
Yeah, consistency.
Yeah. That's hilarious. But yeah, definitely target audience. People, it's important. It's important, I promise.
Yeah, and everything is based around that, so that is the start. That's the first stepping stone for sure.
It'll help you make all your decisions. So when you feel overwhelmed, if you do the brand, you can really lean back on that to help guide your decisions.
like a North Star.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're out there and you're just getting started, make sure that you're not trying to sell to everyone, that you're really niching it down and you are figuring out your target audience. And from there, that's where you can make your pitches from and really speak to the audience that you want to be speaking to help launch, sell your product. So that is great. And if you guys have any questions, us at the Alaska MVP are always here to help you, support you. We're also very happy to get you in touch with Lacey, the branding expert. If you're looking for some more help with that branding guidance, that's what we're here for. Happy to connect you with Lacey. And as Megan said, tonight we have our big manufacturing mixer happening at Alaska Food Co. in Wasilla, 4 to 7. We would love to see you there and see you there in ugly sweaters. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here, Lacey. We so appreciate you taking the time, speaking about branding, speaking about target audience, and we'd love to continue working with you and pushing out this message. So if anyone needs help. And Tristan says, thank you. Thank you so much for being here, Tristan.
Thanks for having me too. Appreciate it, Sammy Jo.
Of course.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time. Oh, and Sammy, just to clarify, we are taking a break this holiday season. So when are we going to be back?
So we will be back in January. So we have the holidays coming up. We will have a closure, mandatory closure at the end to celebrate the holidays and the New Year. So we will be back after New Year, coming back in January. So please make sure to tune in on Thursdays at noon, starting in January. Thank you all so much.
That's where you can find all the info. See you guys.
Bye.